Hello, my fellow law enthusiast humans. We are going to be doing the Karen Read retrial recap for day 25. Couple things to keep in mind. One, I am an outside juror. I am not a legal professional. I am not trying to give legal advice. I am just saying what is happening in the courtroom, and I will link below so you can watch it for yourself. Also, I have some stuff on my arm. I was working in a department that has black compound in it, and I have washed my arms twice, and it is just stained. So maybe I'll try rubbing alcohol after I tell you about the insanity that ensued on day 25. Let's get into it. So the day started out pretty normal. If you remember from day 24, which was the first day of the defense case, at the end of that day we ended with a voir dire of Michael Proctor's lifelong friend, Jonathan Diamandis. Now, Mr. Diamandis was brought back as the first witness. He was the one who they are allowing, they being the judge and what the defense asked for, to bring the rest of Proctor's absolutely horrendous text messages in. I will put links to them up here as we talk about them. And Mr. Diamandis made it very clear that he had very little to say in that particular text thread of the chain, and that he did not approve of any of those things. And he had stated very clearly that he was incredibly uncomfortable and did not feel right about saying the text messages. Well, don't worry, because the first crazy thing that happened was Hank Brennan, the prosecutor, on cross-examination, said, "Here's what we'll do, Mr. Diamandis. I'll read out the text messages, and you just tell me if I read them correctly and accurately, okay?" And that's what he did. He just read the C word, is she gonna skate, that the guy isn't gonna catch any flack, stuff about her having her health bag, etc. And he just, after each one, he just said, "Did I read that correctly and accurately?" And Mr. Diamandis just said, "Yes." And I don't know. How does this help you, Brennan? You're trying to say that Karen Read hit John O'Keefe with her SUV when she was intoxicated after they had an argument. What does reading the lead investigator's horrendous text messages, insulting her multiple times, calling her a whack job, saying that he's looking for nudes in her phone, etc., how does that help you? The only thing I can think of is that he wants to try to, once again, just throw it all at Proctor. He's trying to show, yeah, I didn't want that guy on the stand with me. He's garbage. And look how garbage he is. I'm willing to show you what a piece of garbage Proctor is, and I'm glad he's not a trooper anymore. He didn't say any of that stuff, by the way. This is just what I think he's going for, saying that the whole investigation and every person in this investigation wasn't botched or whatever. It was just one guy who got punished. That is what I think he's going for. And that was all that there was. That witness was dismissed. And then we have our third witness for the defense, who was brought in, Miss Kelly Dever, who we learned you should never trust. Now, this started out fairly normal. She seemed agitated. She seemed annoyed. She was very much just like, she didn't want to be there. The vibe was there. She was annoyed that she had to be there. She even said on direct examination, she didn't know why she was here. She had no connection to this case. That the only thing that she was even relatively involved in with this case was she was working the overnight shift, and around 6-something in the morning, she was sitting in the Canton Police Department parking lot in her cruiser, and her supervisors, Tully and Good, she said that she was called to come inside to work dispatch because the Canton Police Department is a very small police department, and at the time they did not have an independent dispatch unit. It was just whoever working deputies and police officers were would take turns being dispatch workers as well. And so because the supervisors had gotten called to the Karen Reed, Albert Lawn scene with John O'Keefe, she was sent to do dispatch. She was asked, now, I don't know how long she had worked at Canton PD, like just a few years is what I recall her saying. Yeah, just she'd only been there a few years, and she recently, because she has definitively been at the Boston Police Department for 2 years and 2 months. This is 2025. So if she's been there for all of this year, and that means that sometime shortly after the time period between the last trial and now, between 2022 and the last trial, she transferred to the Boston Police Department. And she said that she was just in there to do dispatch, and it was 2022, it's 2025, it's more than 3 years ago. She doesn't really remember everything, but she was asked, are there cameras there? And she goes, I don't know what camera goes to what screen. There are screens for the security things in the dispatch room, but weren't the screens I was focused on, and I don't remember the layout. Okay, but then Jackson asked again, were there cameras in the hallways and corridors at the Canton Police Department? And she said, I don't know where they were. I didn't ask you where they were. I asked you if they were there. And she was like, well, I know from media things that they are there. He goes, I'm not asking what you heard from the media, from your memory. And she kept saying, I don't recall. I don't remember. She worked there for a number of years, longer than she did at the Boston Police Department. And she doesn't know, she can't remember if there were cameras in the hallways at the police department. Okay. And then it went into, are there cameras in the Sally Port? And she goes, well, I know that there are. I don't remember that there were. And she kept saying that over and over and over. It seemed very odd. And at first it was like she was just annoyed. She wasn't going to answer questions. She was going to be vague. Like, she was going to answer questions in the most ambiguous way possible to, like, try to tick off the defense or something. She just didn't want to be there. And so she kept saying, I remember stuff from the media. I saw stuff in the media, but I don't actually remember from my brain. Like, it's over 3 years ago. I don't know. Okay. It started seeming less, I don't want to be here, and more, and it was less, I'm annoyed that I'm here because I don't know why, and more like, I don't want to be here because I'm scared of what's coming out. And the evasiveness progressed. She got very snarky and very snappy. When she was asked about a specific incident, he said, were you talked to? When we've had this conversation with other people, he said, were you talked to about your testimony with the commissioner? Were you called to the commissioner's office? And she said, yes, but it wasn't about anything malicious. And that's fascinating. If you remember from Jen McCabe's testimony, she also said something along the lines of, well, nothing nefarious is happening. And once again, Jackson got to go into, I didn't use the word malicious, Miss Dever. Why did you say malicious? Do you think something could be seen as malicious? And she's like, no, I'm just saying that there wasn't anything malicious. And he went, okay. Then he continued on with his stuff about the commissioner. Have you been called to any other testimonies or any other, how many court cases, Jackson? Like, he took everything back and he said, how many court cases have you testified in? And she was like, 1 to 2 dozen-ish. And he went, okay, how many times have you been called to the commissioner's office about your testimony? And she just kept making these faces. She was just like, she was trying to think of the right way to say, and she was annoyed that she was getting asked. And it was like, no, you haven't gotten called to the commissioner's office about your testimony before. Just say yes or no. It never looks good for you when you're evasive, no matter how innocent it might be, which we're going to learn it wasn't so innocent. Spoiler. If you're being sidesteppy and evasive with the questions, the jury is going to go, and in their heads, they're not going to do that out loud, or they're going to get admonished by the judge again. But then Miss Dever, and the reason why I'm saying that is because a couple times Mr. Alan Jackson mispronounced her name. I don't remember hearing that, but she was like, well, he pronounced my name correctly. It's Dever, not Dever, or whatever he said. And it was like, okay, the snark is unnecessary. But she was being just so snappy. Then it turns out, and he goes, did you notice anything when you were working in the dispatch and you were in the room with the cameras on that night? Did you notice anything unusual or that stood out to you in the Sally Port? And this is where it goes off the rails, my humans, because then Miss Dever says, I can't answer the question the way you want me to answer it because it would be a lie, and it has been pointed out to me already through a timeline that you presented in the media that it was not what I said that it was then, and I retracted my statement. It was made in good faith, and I can't make it again now because that would be a lie, and I'm not going to lie on the stand. I had a distorted memory. She went on a rant. And it was like, okay, you didn't answer my question, Miss Dever. Did you see something? And she was like, you threatened me with perjury and I called the FBI about it. There has been so much caution in this case. You'll notice that every other witness and lawyer from either side, they have referred to the FBI as the other agency, law enforcement from another agency, different law enforcement people. And she just straight up said she called the FBI about it. And he was like, I never threatened you with anything, Miss Dever. And then he asked her, who charges people with crimes? Perjury is a crime, correct? And she said, yes. And he goes, who charges people with crimes? Do defense attorneys, do we charge people with crimes? And then she's doing the look. And it's because the answer is no. The prosecution charges people with crimes. The defense attorneys don't charge anybody. They don't bring charges. Sometimes there might be a counter lawsuit, but they don't make any initial charges. They cannot charge anybody with anything. And she's getting really heated. Jackson's staying pretty calm, except making sure to say her name as aggressively as possible. And then he says, does this sound familiar? And he has the transcript. He's reading it back to her. She lets her look at it. She doesn't really look at it. But he says, do you remember saying that to the other law enforcement agents in August of 2022 that you saw Trooper Ken Berkowitz and Brian Higgins in the Sally Port for, quote, a wildly long time? And she goes, you released information that showed that the timeline wasn't real and that was a distorted memory. I created a false memory. I didn't really do that. And that, ladies, gentlemen, and everybody in between, ended Miss Dever's ability to take the stand for the rest of her career. Why? Because in this very important high-profile case, she just admitted on stand that she made a false memory of important information. She claimed that she saw Ken Berkowitz and Brian Higgins together alone in the Sallyport with Karen Reed's SUV for a wildly long time. She said that she realized that couldn't be true. She contacted the FBI and they were like, no, you're not going to get charged with anything. You're safe. You made it in good faith. It's what you thought at the time. You're not in danger of perjury. And it was because she worked the overnight shift. She was coming towards the end of her regular shift when the other officers were called out to the scene of John O'Keefe at Brian Albert's lawn on 34 Fairview. She worked overtime until 3:45 p.m. Karen Reed's vehicle was not brought into the Sallyport until after 5 p.m. So she would have been gone at least an hour and a half before the SUV would have gone there. She would not have been able to see anything. She told the law enforcement officers from the FBI one thing, and then later she had a false memory, blah, 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 distorted memory. It couldn't have been true. She said she made it in good faith, and that was what she thought at the time. Cool. Does that sound a lot like Jen McCabe to anybody else? Jen McCabe saying that she had a talk with the FBI and that at first she told them that she only made 2 phone calls and that in reality she made 5 phone calls. That she had to recontact the FBI and retract a statement she made. And Mrs. Dever said, my whole job is dependent and I would lose everything if I said the wrong thing on the stand. If I lie on the stand, then I lose my career, I lose my job. And he goes, everything on your job? Jackson says, everything about your job relies on what you say on the stand. When you were in the commissioner's office, what did he say to you? What were his exact words? She sidestepped and was evasive. She was like, he just wanted me to tell the truth. I don't want you to guess his intentions or what he wanted. What did he say? And she once again was pulling the faces of, now we know why she didn't want to be there. She knows darn well why she's there. First of all, that she's saying that she can't lie on the stand, and she blatantly lied on the stand. She said she doesn't know why she's here. She's not connected to the case. You were there. You said that you saw Brian Higgins and another officer with Karen Reed's SUV for a long time. And then you had to retract your statement. And then you claimed that somebody called you with perjury charges until you redacted your statement. So I think you're still lying, Miss Dever. And then, not only that, the commissioner's words that she didn't want to say, she couldn't deny, because there was a transcript, but he had said that he would support her regardless of what she had to say on stand and do the right thing, not tell the truth. He didn't say the words tell the truth. The commissioner told Miss Dever to do the right thing. And he goes, were those the words that he said to you, yes or no? And she goes, that's not a yes or no answer. And he goes, it is a yes or no answer. Did he say those words? And she goes, he said those words, but the way you're implying it is wrong. You know, over-explaining, like Jen McCabe. She was given very Jen McCabe vibes the whole time. And then she admitted that she knew and was longtime friends with another person who had already taken the stand, Sarah Levinson. Sarah Levinson, if you have forgotten, it was a while back. She was at the house celebrating because she is friends with the Albert's son. And she was there with him at the house the night of the incident, and she had already been called to the stand. Miss Dever also admitted that she had seen clips in passing, that she didn't watch the whole trial back to back, and that she had absolutely not seen any of Sarah's testimony. Alan Jackson asked her about sequestration, about the sequestration order. And she was like, I don't know what that means. You're a sworn officer of the law and you don't know what being sequestered means? Sure. Okay, Miss Dever. And it turns out that she was not, to her knowledge, understanding, as far as you want to believe her anyway, that she did not know that she was not allowed to watch those things. To her knowledge, she had not been blocked or sequestered from any of the witnesses or trials. And it was like, why are you so interested in a trial that you claim you have nothing to do with? And it just kept going, where she was told to do the right thing. She was told that the Boston Police Department would support her regardless of what she had to say on stand. She brings out the FBI. So if there was anybody in the jury room who was like, oh, other law enforcement, okay, there was another like police department that was involved. Now they know it's the FBI, meaning that they know there was an FBI investigation, and that's going to sum up some points for them. And what we have at the end of this is yet another Canton police officer, former or otherwise, who lies. She lied initially to the FBI. She lied on the stand about not knowing why she was there. She claimed she had no connection to the case. You do have a connection to the case. And I have never seen someone so, like, she practically jumped out of the witness stand when it was done. We move right along into the beginning of the testimony of a witness who I have been looking forward to a lot, and that is Dr. Russell. Dr. Russell is the dog bite expert who is an actual medical doctor. And the reason she was brought on was because in the first trial, Arca, the reconstructionist for the defense, were not allowed to opine or make opinions about the injuries to John O'Keefe's arms. Because according to Judge Canton in the last trial, it was because only medical doctors are allowed to make medical opinions. So they hired a medical doctor to make those opinions. She worked in the ER for a very long time, and she had specializations in papers and peer-reviewed papers on dog bite wounds, identifying the pattern of dog bite wounds, etc. And all of that stuff seemed very standard, straightforward. She said, yeah, there doesn't have to be a deep puncture, because Dr. Scortibello, the medical examiner who examined John O'Keefe's body, said that the puncture wounds on John O'Keefe's arm weren't actually punctures. They were lacerations, that they weren't very deep. Okay, cool. Dr. Russell said that she could not determine a breed of dog, and that she also could not determine if they were made from claws or a bite, or definitively, but that they were consistent in pattern to an animal attack of some kind, leaning more towards, just because of how many it looked like a dog bit or tried to bite a couple times. And she said if they don't make a good grasping impact, the person moved their arm, or they didn't quite get in there the first time, that would cause those not deep, or if they were just kind of nipping, like they couldn't get the whole arm, that would explain the not deep marks, the non-puncture wounds, etc. And she said that no, Mr. John O'Keefe's injuries were not consistent with even being sideswiped by a car. And that's where we ended, very promptly, as always, with Miss Judge Canton. She's not having any of your overtime. I don't know if she's stressed about paying the staff or if there are scheduling issues, but she is always ready to GTFO. So that is where we end. I hope that you enjoyed my little coverage, and tell me, how wild is it that the FBI officially comes in and that it officially comes in through a former Canton police officer. We can have that fun talk in the comments, and I will talk to you in the next one. Bye.